Approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right.
Informal, so you can
Informal, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
just- Aye.
Opposed? All right, and that passes. We will move on. Next, we have the approval of the minutes from the work session and regular business meeting of May 24th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. And oppose? All right. And that motion has carried. Next brings us to public participation. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to address the board regarding agenda items or other matters of concern. We do have one member of the public who wishes to join us. Randy, are you here? Okay, if you want to come on up to the podium, please. And Randy, just a reminder, since you called in, you'll be given 5 minutes to present tonight. I believe Mr. Wilson's going to broadcast the timer up on the board, so that way you know where you are with your minutes.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous. I'm a recently retired high school teacher, and people are always surprised when I tell them I get really nervous at public speaking. So
you're fine.
this is my first time doing something like this. My name is Randy Derrick. I just retired, as I told you. I live in Carter Lake currently. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to talk with you. And basically, I'm here to draw attention to school security. I'm sure that that's been on your minds too. I'm not trying to insult you with anything that I say. As a teacher, seeing the amount of violence that's increased over the years, it's gotten me more and more concerned. And the last Uvalde event is the one that just kind of pushed me over the edge. I was angry for days. I've been upset before, but I was angry. I'm also sad to say that that's kind of toned down a lot, which scares me because I think we should be angry. Anyway, that's what I'm here to kind of talk about. The number of school shootings has increased over the last number of years. There were several in a row at schools where I actually thought about getting a gun myself and taking it to school, which not only is illegal, but probably risky in its own right. Never did that. I don't think teachers should all have guns. I don't think everybody should be armed. I think there's too many other risks associated with that kind of thing. And I guess, bottom line here is I think the government, big government, has kind of been at a standstill, and they're always arguing and bickering, and we should do this, and they do a little bit of something. They really never do anything. So I really want to encourage you and whoever else might be involved to take some serious actions at the local level, okay? As I say some of these things, I will also have to admit to you, I have no idea what actual security precautions you have at each of the different buildings. I'm sure they're not all the same. I can speak to my 30-some years of teaching in high schools and seeing things that I've seen there. Let me see, I've got my notes. The stuff I want to kind of suggest to you for consideration, I don't know if you have, I'm sure you've kicked some of these things around. I know they're going to cost a lot of money. So don't think I'm walking into this, I guess, blind with some of the stuff that I'm going to mention here. Some specific things that I think about and have run into. Some of these stem directly from the Uvalde incident. One of the great things about the Uvalde incident is the story changed every day. This was what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. Part of that, I think, is the public demand for instant answers, and it doesn't work out well that way. The video showed that this person did not struggle to get into the building. He pretty much just walked in a door. So anyway, here's some specific suggestions for you, I think. All classroom doors need to be lockable from the inside, and they have to be ones that can't be kicked in, which means they have to open outward. And as I understand it, there are schools that still do not have that kind of thing in place. I think continued ID security and stuff at doors, which most of the schools probably have, is fine. It disturbs me that these disturb people who attack children. I'm sure that's where probably the least protection is there, because you worry about the high school kids and the graduates and that sort of thing. But I think that needs to be implemented at all the grade schools, no matter what. I do have 2 grandchildren in the system now, so that's of specific interest to me, of course. Security cameras in the hallways. Apparently having access to seeing what's going on where could be a problem. And again, I don't know all these things you have, so I'll quit saying that. But a way to monitor something if they get in. My primary thing is they're not doing anything really about stopping them, and nor the stuff that they want to do will make a quick fix. So the number one thing the local people can do is make sure they don't get into the building as much as possible. And I also believe there's no thing that is 100% foolproof. So I understand that as well. Locking doors in sections of buildings. A lot of buildings have wings. So a lot of them have fire doors that will shut. Make sure those things can be locked. That way at least you can isolate an intruder should they get in. I recommend immediate discussions with your current security people. I know schools do have cameras in some places. I knew they have like ID cards to lock doors and access things and so forth. But they probably have a lot of information to you on lapses in security or weak areas. And they would have you some useful, probably direct input on how that stuff could be tightened up.
Randy, you have about 30 seconds.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to skip some of the other things. I think there should be more security personnel there, ones that can check the doors frequently and not just check 2 doors and wander the halls, between classes. Allow certain trained teachers or staff, a friend suggested this to me, to have non-lethal weapons, like guns that shoot rubber bullets or those packets. Definitely enhance student-teacher training with consequences. I know myself, teachers have been known to leave doors open to the building. And it makes things quick and easy, and you don't have to wait there and admit them when it's time if you need to. But I think that's very important. And I know I'm kind of over my limit here. Oh yeah, and lastly, 2 sets of entry doors for sure at all entrances, so that if they break through one, you have some sort of locking mechanism on the second door. And I guess that's about all I can say here. Like I said, my anger has tapered off a lot. But I really think things need to be done quickly. That's the other thing. You have a bond issue for security enhancement, but you don't really make serious enhancements. So quick action appreciated. And I don't want to put shade on the future awards that are coming up. So thank you for listening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudak. At this time, I'm going to invite Ms. Ostrowski to join me at the podium. We do have some super athletes here tonight that we are going to recognize, and so proud of the student athletes that are here tonight that Ms. Ostrowski will be introducing. And I do want to say to those watching, if you stay tuned at the end, Mr. Stile is going to do a technology report, which will have a section around school security. So we do take school security very, very seriously, and I just want you to know that we're going to have a presentation on that this evening. So now, back to celebrating our student athletes. Ms. Ostrowski, the floor is yours.
Yes, don't we love it when Council Bluffs is on the state stage, and our students are the ones to do that. So we have 3 groups of students to celebrate, or 3 categories, I should say. The first is state tennis. I'm pleased to introduce to you our state qualifiers in boys tennis. These young men from Abraham Lincoln High School placed second in doubles at districts to punch their ticket and compete against a tough opponent at state. From Abraham Lincoln, let's celebrate Chris Wales and Ty James. Come on up. And Chris. Yes. Please accept your award from Dr. Murillo. And their coach, Myron Wilder, was not able to be here tonight, but I know that he shares in our pride in these young men, as do their parents. So parents, please stand and be recognized as well. Sorry, I'm the official one.
Oh, you fun.
I'm just saying to all kids, do not be shy. Come on up and be part of the paparazzi. I know, they should be. Quite the team. Thank you. All right. Now from the court to the track, let's celebrate our Class 4A state runner-up in the 400-meter hurdles, Abraham Lincoln High School incoming senior Abby LaSalle. While she's coming up, I'm going to share that with a time of just 1 minute, 4.59 seconds, she was just shy of the state champion's time of 1 minute, 3.14 seconds. Of note also, Abby, with Coach Tracy Stoops, is that her state time beat the previous school record set back in 2000 before she was born, and her time ranks in the top 30 in the United States. Congratulations.
Well, most of the records are old, if you look at them, but I mean,
2000. New Year's Eve, 1999, pretty easily.
you're just waiting for your computer to crash.
Yeah, yes, I was.
Okay, from the court to the track to the pitch, right? Okay, we're so proud of all of our student athletes. Tonight, we want to celebrate the Abraham Lincoln High School girls soccer team for earning their way to the finals of the Class 3A state championship. As runner-ups, they are the first ever this is the first ever state championship appearance by any Abraham Lincoln High School girls team in school history. This team had an impressive season with a record of 17-4, and we appreciate their dedication and their accomplishments, along with their parents, coaches, head coach Robbie Miller. And I wanted to share, Coach, would you join us up here real quick? He was named the 3A Coach of the Year. Okay, and you guys are having your banquet this evening. But before that, we want to celebrate each of the girls that are present with us tonight. And again, as I call the girls' names, if parents want to stand and be recognized for your daughter, that would be wonderful. All right, first I'd like to invite Lexi Mayo, who was part of the team, but also second team All-State in defense. Congratulations. Hannah Schimmer was first team All-State as a forward. And Paige Brocker was first team All-State defense and the Daily Nonpareil's Player of the Year. And they'll stay up here and have the rest of the team join you. First of all, Trista Baker. Okay. Liberty and Liliana Bates are not able to join us tonight, so Coach will take theirs and any other. How's he going to do this? Bella Kane. Megan Elam. Abby Evers. Kenzie Kaufman. Okay. Emma Lee. Shelby Lee. Jasmine Martinez Rangel. Let's see, I didn't mention a few that aren't coming as well. I didn't mention Taylor Ferguson or Ella Hansen. They aren't here tonight. Jillian Mather is not also able to join us. How about Aubrey McCumber? Piper McGuire. Aubrey Sambothy. Haley Santon. I don't believe Natalie Simons is able to join us tonight, or Allie Smith. Okay. Stephanie Smith. Nope. Sylvia. He said Sylvia's our last. Sylvia Stott. All right.
Waiting by herself.
Okay, I'm going to take a photo and then we'll get parents in here. I know.
It's like they know how to take the team photo.
Yeah, it's fast.
Dr. Murillo, we have a present for you. I give the teams a state soccer ball every year. We have the team sign it, and we just appreciate all that you do for girls athletics and what you do for the district. We just want to say thank you and give you a little keepsake for this historic moment.
Privilege here. Your other ball is up on my shelf. So I keep watching as you progress each year. And I'm telling you, even though I was watching you on my monitor, I felt like I was there sometimes. And the saves that were happening at the goal and stuff, I was like, oh gosh. And I'm too old to play. But I felt like I was there. So super excited and so proud of you guys. You should really be proud. Even coming up as a, sometimes people are like, well, we didn't win it. You won. You won by being there, competing, the leadership, the teamwork, the 21st century skills you guys have learned by coming together collectively and building a team, and how much it's coaching. Right? So, Coach, we appreciate. I know coaching. I coach basketball. I didn't coach soccer or volleyball at high school, and I know the hours you put in. And these girls recognize that you're significant. And I know how your family has to sometimes take second seat. And, but the what you're imparting into them is amazing. So thank you. Thank you.
You want to just graduate?
No, I think we're good. All right.
Where's she going to go to school?
She's going to Central in Pelham.
All right, I'll let parents in.
What's their,
So Lutheran. They're liberal arts, but she's going for biochem engineering.
like a Midland college?
It's not.
You guys have got no pictures taken.
Really?
Midland's
Yeah. And I'm gonna go out and take some pictures.
Midland and Creighton kind of trade off every year. Who's
Yeah, but you get
Midland's a great school.
scholarships. Oh, do you? Midland, yeah. Oh, it's, like they matched Faye's soccer scholarship because she had her hip, had to have surgery on her hip, and she's not even done playing
Yeah,
football.
that deserves a spot right there.
Heard she was an all-state qualifier a couple years ago. He brought her in. He gave her $4,000 more to come see.
Yeah, I watched the game. Yeah, I watched it.
She would have got.
Centennial was pretty tough.
So yeah, it was a
Yeah.
good deal for us. So.
Okay. Okay, next we're moving to our student achievement portion, Dr. Barla?
Yeah, thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Borthman to the podium. He's going to present this evening on our academic achievement. And tonight, we will be presenting our spring NWEA MAP results. And I'd also like to say that this is Dr. Borthman's last presentation with us. He will be leaving us, and I certainly have appreciated all the work he's done for the district, and look forward to one day when he gets tired of his new career, he may want to come back and be a part of our team again. So, Dr. Borthman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. Appreciate it. I would take just a minute of personal privilege and thank the board for all of the hard questions, probing questions, support that you provided us, especially in the teaching and learning department over the past 8 years, 3 years before that, when I was director of secondary education. I looked up the other night, and this is just over 100 board presentations that I've given since being in Council Bluffs. So you've had to put up with me many nights, and so I thank you for your patience. And thank Dr. Murillo for your leadership and trusting me to help guide academics in our school district. It's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity the last 5 years. And so I really appreciate that. Tonight, I'm going to share with you some of our work that we've had in the spring 2022 for our MAP results. And as you recall, our district goals continue to guide the work that we're doing around academic achievement, focusing in on ensuring that 80% of our students are scoring in the proficient bands, that 60% of our students meet their individual growth targets, and that all of our students, every student, regardless of their socioeconomic status or disability, ethnic group, et cetera, shows some type of improvement from testing period to testing period. I do want to mention tonight, we are still in a pandemic. Unfortunately, we have not returned to normal yet. I think I've said that probably the last 6 times you've heard me present about our board goals around student achievement, and tonight is no different, and I'm going to illustrate that in a couple ways here with some data tonight. So first we want to look at mathematics. We had we were about even, less than 1% down, 0.3% down across the district. When we look at individual grade levels, you can see that we continued to show some strong performance in our elementary scores. Middle school actually showed some signs of improvement, and our high school was basically flat. When you look at this from a holistic point of view, since we started testing in the spring of 2018, so now we have basically 5 complete years of MAP data. The blue shaded area shows the tests that were taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you'll notice that that upward trajectory has somewhat softened. There's not been a lot of movement since the pandemic began. And you might ask yourself, well, why? Why are we continuing to see this flattening? What is the biggest variable? And thanks to the work of Dr. Shudak, we were able to dig into trying to identify what really makes the most difference. What is that thing that we can put our finger on that says if students do this, they do well. If they don't do this, they don't do well. And you've heard me say this before, but this testing period showed this even more, that attendance continues to be the biggest driver of whether or not our students are successful in their MAP testing. And I'm going to show you a graphic here that represents that in a minute. But I did want to show you kind of what this looks like when we put fall testing scores on top of spring testing scores. So that blue line shows you where students performed in the fall testing period, so basically 9 months of education. Anywhere where the purple bar is above the blue line, that's a grade level that had increases in their performance from fall to spring. Anywhere where the blue line is above, you can see those were the places where we had where we fell behind. And for the most part, those are only in 6th and 7th grade, and then in all 3 of our high school grade levels. We did not see as much improvement as we did in our elementary mathematics. Like I said, attendance makes a huge difference. So what this chart shows is the difference between students who did not have chronic absenteeism and the students who did have chronic absenteeism. So the teal bar represents the students who missed more than 18 days of school, so more than 10% of the days, 10% or more. The pink bar shows students who missed fewer than 10% of the days, and the differences are all statistically significant at a very, very strong correlative value. If you look at, it ranges from 13% difference at elementary and gets as high as 26% difference in high school. And so when you take those into consideration, we know that if we can get our students in the seats for a prolonged period, a consistent period of time, we have the ability to change their trajectory academically. But as Mr. Hamilton mentioned to me this evening before the report, we had over 1,500 positive COVID cases in the last school year. And so it's not hard to see when you look at students who needed to miss school because of COVID or because of a family member may have been sick at some point during the school year, or they were exposed and needed to stay home because of a fragile loved one, that they were not able to be at school. And if they weren't able to be at school, they likely fell into that category where their academic performance was not as strong as the students who maybe weren't afflicted by COVID-19 in some way. So I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind.
I also wanted to provide a look at students meeting their growth targets. You'll notice that most of our grade levels are hovering around that 50% mark. We have some that have exceeded the 50% mark and have exceeded the 60% mark, namely our kindergarten class. Over 60% of those students met their individual growth targets. And when we look at how that compared to a year ago, so what percentage of students met their growth targets fall 20 to spring 21 versus fall 21 to spring 22, you can see anywhere where the purple bar is above the blue line, those cohorts had more students meeting their growth targets this year than they did last year. So that would be from our 7th grade all the way through to our high school, which is a little bit of an anomaly, that we are slowly making some progress. Students are starting to meet their growth targets. They're just not getting up to proficiency. But that's how it starts. It starts with tracking where you're at, setting a goal, working to meet that goal, and then achieving it. And I think that's very positive as we move forward into the 2023 school year. This is the best chart we've ever had for the percentage of students meeting some growth during the school year. We had 4 grade levels that were above 98%. That's exceptional. That they made some growth during the school year. Remember, when students start farther behind, they have more to catch up. Their growth targets have to be more aggressive in order to get them back on grade level. So when we see these types of charts that show that our students are making some growth during the school year, even if it's not hitting their growth target, it shows us that we are making progress over time. And in fact, our 1st and 2nd grade were 99.3% of the students making some growth during the school year. So that's remarkable progress. Also wanted to look at how our subgroups performed, how we are looking at equity across our school district, providing opportunities for all learners. This chart shows the percentage of students by subgroup that were proficient, and then the blue line shows that percentage of those students who met their individual growth targets. And one thing you'll notice is that line hovers at or above 50% for nearly all of our subgroups. And that's when we, according to NWEA, we should be hitting about 50% of our students meeting their subgroup, their individual targets. I will note that this is one of the highest performing testing periods we've had for English language learners. So 30% of our English language learners were proficient on this testing period. That's almost 10% improvement from the fall. So that's pretty aggressive when we look at the growth that they've made over the course of one school year. Turn our attention to reading for a moment. Reading, we had a slight decline, about 1.7% overall from fall to spring. And that is not where we want it to be. I wish I would say I was surprised by that, but given the focus that we have put on mathematics, when you're trying to dribble 2 balls in each hand, one usually is more successful than the other. And you can see that mathematics for us this year is where we did put most of our professional development efforts over the year. And reading did not do as well as mathematics in terms of improvement. However, our proficiency in reading is still higher than our proficiency in mathematics. And so you'll notice that when you look at this chart, we have more grade levels that are at or above 60% proficiency. In fact, one grade level that is getting very close to 80% proficiency, hitting that target, was our kindergarten class this year. Continues to show the return on investment for early childhood education and the work of our preschool programs. Very high performing. This is the historical trend line. You'll notice that blue, that teal shaded area at the back is really our pandemic testing results. And you can see that really since winter of 2020, we've been relatively stable through the pandemic. We didn't really lose a lot. We just kind of have been stable if you look at where we were at coming into the pandemic and where we are today. This chart, similar to the one I showed you in mathematics, shows fall 21 versus spring 22, so where students started, where they ended. Anytime that blue bar is above the blue line, those are cohorts that increase their proficiency. So that would be kindergarten, 2nd grade, which we expect to see when they move from fall to spring, a very large increase there. And we had some stabilization in sixth grade, and eighth grade actually improved quite a bit over their fall testing test scores. So we were happy to see some types of improvements in our middle school scores as well. Again, attendance makes a difference in reading, just like it makes a difference in mathematics. The differences are not quite as stark when we look at reading compared to math. The gap is about 10% at elementary, creeps up to just over 15% at middle school, and gets almost to 20% by the time it's in high school. So we really have to redouble our efforts to make sure that students are able to come to school when they're healthy to do so. The percentage of students who met their individual growth targets, we have more grade levels here that are getting closer to that 60% than we do in mathematics. You'll notice that our eighth grade, our kindergarten, and our second grade are either at or very near 60%, this is the first time we've had 3 grade levels that have touched that in reading. Similarly, we have some really awesome performance for students making any growth. It wasn't quite as spectacular as our mathematics, where we had those that were just about 100%, but we do have 3 grade levels that are above 96%, which is impressive in and of itself. That eighth grade class, again, continues to kind of pop out of there as a class that made a lot of improvement this year. Again, when we look at the percentage of students who scored at the top 3 levels by subgroup, and then put on top of that where our students were in terms of meeting their individual growth targets, we actually have more subgroups that are closer or at 50% in reading than we do in mathematics, even though math did very well as well. So a couple takeaways tonight. Lastly, attendance matters. If we can get our kids in school and we can keep them on a consistent basis, they have a much better opportunity to learn and sustain that learning throughout the school year. And so when students are healthy to be in school, we want them to be in school. And I know that's the work that Mr. Hamilton works on with his team every day, and continues to beat the drum that attendance matters. Some specific steps that we're working on, or that the team will be working on next year. It's hard for me not to say we, but they will be focusing on continuing our work on grade level implementation. That continues to be the best driver for us to make sure that we have our curriculum implemented with integrity so that students, regardless if they miss 5 days or 25 days, have access to high quality instruction in the classroom. That's the number one vehicle. Secondly, the work that we're doing, that the team is doing next year on MTSS, I believe will pay increasing dividends as we look at the needs for individual and groups of students and systemically respond to them, whether that is an intervention based on behavior, academics, or social and emotional health. We continue to bolster our attendance initiatives and interventions at all levels, the work of our school-based support liaisons, our school-based mental health therapists, our graduation coaches that intervene with students and families to help solve issues that prevent them from getting to school. And as you know, we really intensified our work this summer on mathematics and summer school. Not only did we add elementary as a key driver for summer learning for mathematics, but we also added a special middle level learning opportunity for students as well. And then next year we are providing some additional layers of support for our secondary team, professional development for teachers, implementation, consulting. We added some additional staff to support the implementation of our curriculum at elementary, or excuse me, at ELA and math at our secondary level. To help really dig into where we can provide more robust instruction for students. So, with that, I would welcome any questions from the board about our spring map data.
Questions from the board? Dave?
Do we have a sense of how our district compares in the 3 growth indicators with other districts throughout the nation that administer the MAP testing?
Yeah, so MAP does give us some national data, and we also do collect some pieces of MAP data from our other MOAC districts, although they administer theirs a little bit differently than when we do, because that's their state test in Nebraska. But what we consider proficiency is the 40th percentile. So any student who scores in those bands from average, high average to high, we would consider to be basically meeting the benchmark. And that is the norm group that NWA gives us. So that test is renormed continually based on all the data that comes in. And so those RIT scores sometimes go up a little bit, sometimes they go down a little bit based on where the norm group, where the average students perform. The one I would say that we track the closest is the percentage of students meeting their growth targets. And the reason we do that is because NWEA has a long history of being able to predict student performance, and that's kind of what they're known for. And so what they tell us is that on average, you should expect 50% of your students to meet their individual growth targets. That's national. And we almost always have more than 50% of our students meeting their growth target. That's why we increased our goal to 60%, because we surpassed that. Now, the pandemic has given us some challenges along the way. And as students progress in grade levels, it's more difficult to meet your individual growth targets or show any growth, because the window gets so narrow once you get to the top of the RIT band, as I've illustrated that several times before. But the one thing about NWEA MAP that you can always feel confident in is that it is a good benchmark of what performance looks like compared to others nationally, because of their sample size is so large. Millions and millions of students using the MAP test every year. So it gives us a good bellwether of how our students are doing compared to others.
The reason for the question was that I did listen to an article or a program that NPR produced, and they were interviewing several educators throughout the United States, and several of the people were from the NWEA, and they were talking about how nationally, we were looking at 0.3% and 1.7%. There were districts that they were interviewing that had 15% and 20% loss in growth. So I have to commend Dr. Murillo and you, Dr. Vorthman, and all of the teachers and all of the parents and the students that work so diligently through these trying times, that they persevered, they were persistent, they kept to it. And Dr. Murillo always talks about persistence. I mean, and she'll go into a classroom and a student will announce, say, well, this is what I'm doing to be more persistent or resilient. So the students are learning the language of what it means to be a part of their own growth. And so it's good to hear that even though we struggled, we stayed afloat. The students stayed afloat in general, and that's a celebration that we should
It is.
Be thankful for, because many districts and many students fell so very far behind due to many things, whether it's lack of access, all of those things that we know that students were denied during these hard times that we've had. So.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, Dave, what I always worry about is the spring assessment. Because remember, we do our state assessment first and then ask the students to test again. And the NWA is not an easy assessment. It's always challenging our students. And so if our students are successful, then it pushes them to see if they can be successful again, and it pushes them. And so that teaches the students to have that grit, to go after that RIT score. And in our state assessment, they have tried a little bit of what we would call adaptive, but I think that this gives us a good predictor. So if we have a small decline in spring, we do know it's after the state assessment, and we do feel really good about our state assessment that is coming back. Of course, it's only preliminary right now, but NWA is moving toward being able to help us be as a predictor for our district. So then our staff can see how well they're doing and what the predictions should look like. So it is about helping students find also success, and that's what Dave's talking about, is our students know their RIT score. Our students know their goals that they set with their teachers, and they take ownership of their learning. And that's really where we want students to complement the work of the teachers, and our teachers have embraced this, which I'm very, very thankful for. And they've seen it as a tool to help improve, and not as a tool that is punitive or a gotcha, because that's not where we want to be with our assessment. We want to know where our students are and what we can do to make them better. And so I'm really thankful for the work at the building level, that they have embraced this.
That, the report that you mentioned, Mr. Kazire, I think that, I can't remember if it was the fall of 20 or the winter of 2021 when NWA came out with their kind of their first blush of, so how, was the sky really falling? And we pushed back. In fact, they actually reached out to Dr. Shudak and asked why our data was not in line with their data, because they were seeing between 9 and 15% decreases in reading or mathematics at any individual grade level coming out of the pandemic. And ours has been relatively stable. Most have been digging out of just trying to get back to where they were.
I want to say, I had a parent ask me about the map testing, if there was any sort of almost like a sandbox or a plaything for a parent to go online and look at map and kind of walk through what that is. To be, I had never asked it before, but.
Yeah, the NWA website has some kind of like, I would call them sample, like testing environment questions. Obviously, they don't release the actual test items themselves, but it's not that much different than a test that you or I probably took when we were in school. The difference is it's on a computer now. And there are computer adapted items, which that does make it a little bit different, where students may have to drop and drag something or put something in order or highlight a piece of text. All those things are a little bit different. But our state assessment, as Dr. Morello mentioned, is slowly coming up to that bar as well. Their assessment now is what they call a staged assessment, meaning that there are 2 stages, and based on how you answer a couple of questions, you're put into one of 2 stages, which doesn't seem very adaptive to me, but I guess it's a step in the right direction. We feel very confident that the rigor of the MAP assessment more than adequately prepares our students for what they're going to experience on ISASP.
Students who are missing schools or missing school days, is there a plan in place, I guess, to ramp up then, almost like a reintegration into that to make sure they're making up that lost time, that lost education?
The challenge that we run into is once that day is gone, we only have 180 days of school. And so what we've tried to do in all of our curriculum areas is make sure that we have identified the highest leverage standards in all of our curriculum. We've also spent additional time working with teachers, even on the very last day of school, looking at vertical alignment to make sure that we are not overlapping things that don't need to be overlapped, but that we're hitting things that are the most important along the way. And all of our curriculum now, and all of our curricular areas are spiraled, meaning that students get concepts over and over again instead of getting it one and done, which is a dramatic change from where I first started working on curriculum 11 years ago. We really were a mastery-based approach district, meaning that you were going to get presented the standard, you were going to get tested on it, and then we were going to move on to the next standard. We've kind of learned the error of our ways over the past 11 years. I learned the error of my ways, that we needed a more comprehensive approach, because if nothing else than the situation that you just mentioned, or mobility of students, or students who need to hear something a second or third or fourth time. And so we have moved to a spiraled curriculum in all of our grade levels, in all of our curricular areas in the core, so that students get repeated concepts throughout the entire course system.
And then I guess one final thing on the IEP students.
Yeah,
I know it's a broad range of students,
sure is.
right? How do we look at that and know if we're making progress in that category, given the changing dynamics of that group each year?
You know, one of the things that we try to look at is those IEP teams make decisions based on the needs of those students. And so those students have individual growth goals, individual goals. Many of them have now move towards using the MAP as maybe one of those, out of maybe they have 3 goals, the MAP may be one of them. Some are very individualized, as you well know, that they're based on a student's individual disability. But MAP is not the measurement that we need to use to know if students with IEPs are making progress. That is rooted in the role of the IEP team and the progress monitoring. What we don't want to see, though, is that our students, our IEP students, are not meeting their individual growth targets. So if you look at that in that chart, you'll see that in math, nearly 40% of our students with IEPs met their, or in reading, met their individual growth targets. The same can be true for reading. It was 45 or 46%. So what that tells us is we are providing even students who have special diagnosis that they need additional supports. Even our students with IEPs are able to meet their individual growth targets if given the right levels of instruction.
Yeah, and Mr. Arthur, one of the, when we do our data consults with our principals, one of the things that they were most proud of this year is they were really measuring, did we close the gap? Are we seeing growth among our subgroups? And they were really looking at, I can think of one school that the principal was so excited about the growth of the IEP. And others were very excited to see the growth among our ELL students, our Hispanic students. And they began to see the growth compared, that they ended up with this year compared to last year. And then what did the cohorts look like? So this is something that I'm really excited about, because it used to be just how many students do we have that are proficient? And now what we're tracking is we're tracking it also looking at closing the achievement gap. And then we're looking at what are those subgroups and what are the cohorts of those subgroups look like. And we're looking at it in different ways besides just proficient, not proficient. So that means that we're now getting a plan to meet them at their individual. And that's a place our principals have really grown into. That's very exciting.
Yeah, I think I remember when we were first talking about that, we brought this out about how, you know, challenging kids at all levels, right? And are they getting growth? And I just sometimes like to see that, you know, are we meeting the needs of all those kids across that spectrum? You know, to make sure that we are challenging our top, you know, our top scorers or whatever you call this, our growth. And maybe it's just, are they growing at a rate that's sufficient? Those top kids, are they getting challenged to keep growing? Because I think you're right about these spring tests where it's kind of like, yeah, it's another test. You know, and I remember last year that was a big issue with kids just kind of took the test off, it seemed like. So not only are we challenging those students, but are we providing the supports necessary for our students who are struggling learners to make sure that everyone's getting the best possible opportunity.
I would say because of the MAP assessment, we've been able to track that, where before, I remember my first year here, I couldn't really ever put my finger on where we were because we didn't have the means to assess and measure growth. And we just get the state assessment back and we go, oh, how'd we do? And now our teachers and our administrators, they're able to see how the students are doing and being able to see. And one teacher, one principal that I'm talking about, they were even, because of the lack of growth that they had in the prior year for the IEP, they even shifted and then really changed the way they did their PLCs to include and ensure that our teachers with students with IEPs were included with our other class teachers to really make sure that the work and looking at what that work looked like to make sure that they were having those expectations. And they really saw some great growth at that school. And so I do think it's something we still have a lot of work to do in, but I do think that we are seeing some really good movement.
I guess I've got, my last question would be then to Dr. Murillo. There's a question in here. I appreciate what we've done, what you've done with other community leaders in the past, leading up to the start of the fall semester, in partnering with the mayor, with other city leaders in talking about the importance of attendance. What can we do as a board to help capitalize on what we know and heard tonight about the importance of of every day, attendance every day. What can we do to get the message out to our students, to our parents, to the community, how important it is to take this very seriously, and that this is we want all of our students to be achieve more. And so, what can we do to capitalize again? Stating it again, to capitalize on what we know about the importance of attendance and kind of fire up the community to get behind every student and tell them that we support you. We support you. We want you to be in school every day.
Well, it is something that we talked about in MOAC, because we've always in the fall had those kind of attendance, and with the pandemic, they stopped.
Right.
So we're looking at re-engaging and coming together collectively to talk about how important the attendance is. And then at our building level, our principals know that in our school improvement plan and the work we've been doing around MTSS, and how do we now as a building make it a priority? And then Mr. Hamilton has teams that are at each school level. And what we've got to do is find a way to make this not punitive, where we're just calling parents and being negative, but how do we make this like a campaign that we engage them? I know that a lot of districts are struggling, especially with students in 7, 8, all the way up to 12th grade, because the pandemic gave them that pass to stay at home. And then we said, if you're COVID or exposed, we're going to put you at home. And then, so now how do we flip that script to no longer are you going to, and I know of a lady that was telling me, even she has a first grader, which would be a second grader next year, and she was saying, oh, they're going to cancel school. So in that second grader's mind, she's already thinking schools aren't going to be in session all, because we're going to be at home again. And so how do we get students to reengage and understand this is a norm? Now, to go to school every day, it's the norm. To reengage and get your credits, it's a norm. So we're going to have to do some things differently and really embrace attendance is an issue, and we have to get after it. And hopefully, we won't be sending them home for 10 days next year. Hopefully, everyone will get, will take advantage if there's an opportunity that the vaccine fits their philosophy to take that vaccine. And then we do a lot of safety measures, and we're not sending children home. That's why it's so hard for us to make that like someone's not doing their job when we sent kids home. And so now it's how do we change their mindset? To me, that's the bigger problem for me. And we can do the campaigns and kick that off, but we really got to find a way. And that's why I'm hoping that some of the pathways will draw kids in. But it's still happening at the elementary level. And that's our greatest concern, is that elementary level. So we're working on that. We don't have our final plan yet, but the principals are all aware too. And then, of course, Dr. Bruckner's leading the MOAC effort to have that city. Great question. Thank you, Dr. Voigtman. Okay, next we have our informational presentations this evening, and we're going to begin by asking Mr. Hamilton to join me at the podium. And Mr. Hamilton tonight has our two building level activities and athletic directors with us, and they are going to present on the extra and co-curricular, our annual report. We usually do this report for our new board members every year in June. We really believe that students should have opportunities, and that helps connect them better to school. So we've set some goals around that. That's in goal 4. And so Mr. Hamilton's going to kind of walk you through that and set the stage for our presentation. So Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, Ms. Shudak, the rest of the board. I really appreciate the opportunity to continue to have conversations about not just our regular school day, but the extracurricular and the co-curricular and the activities outside the normal school day that really make a difference for kids, and talk about engaging them in school and making them want to come to school. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. With our athletic directors, our activities directors, I was sitting there thinking how busy they are at baseball and softball games every night of the week. So at least they're conditioned tonight here with us. So they're probably happy about that. So I did in your board packets and in Friday notes, I gave you a lot of information that had some trend data and just numbers and some highlights. I'm going to get started first, and then I'm going to have the activities directors comes up, and I really asked them to do 3 things for you today. I asked them to provide highlights of some programming Obviously, we saw some things tonight that are really great things within our school, and we've seen them all year with kids coming up. Then I've asked them to provide you with some challenges that they see within their schools to really getting kids engaged. And then the last thing is I wanted them to provide their focus to you, because I know you always ask what are things you can do to help, so I wanted them to provide their focus for the next school year. So like Dr. Murillo said, the reason why we have these programs, and it's part of our goal 4, which is to ensure each student is supported and connected. Our goal is to have 75% of our students participate in at least one extra and co-curricular activity. That can be one of our athletic teams, whether that's swimming or football. It could be extra or co-curricular activities, drama, robotics, band. Or this last year, we had 49 different 21st century clubs. And I know I talked to you about those before. Those aren't limited. We could have new clubs next year. It's really up to student interest. When we talk about this 75%, we knew that was a lofty goal, because last year when we set this, we were sitting at 46% of our kids, and we were coming out of a pandemic. I'm happy to report today we're very close to finalizing it. I don't think it's going to move much, but we're sitting today at 60% of our kids this last school year participated in something. We have room for growth, and it's great to hear our activities directors talk about they know the specific number of students it's going to take to get over that threshold. So it's great to have a goal for them and for their coaches and for people leading clubs for us moving forward. So at this point, I'm going to invite our new activities director from Thomas Jefferson. Luke Peterson has been with us a long time within the district, but he's going to be new to Thomas Jefferson, and he really has taken over in the last month at TJ, and I've been really happy with the work that he's done, and I know he's meeting with community members and coaches, and he's just, so far, he's done a fabulous job. So he wanted to come and present tonight, so I told Dustin Detterding he could stay home, so Luke is here, so come on up, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. First of all, I just want to say my name is Luke Peterson, and I'm proud and excited to be here as the new Assistant Principal and Activities Director at TJ. That being said, I'd also like to thank Mr. Detterding for his work in the data before I got there, and in our transition, we went through a lot of those things, and then he turned it over to me, which I really helped. His work was greatly appreciated. Let's start with the highlights. From 2021-22. At Thomas Jefferson, we had a 14% increase in extracurricular participation. We were MRC champions in boys bowling. We had a level 1 rating in State Marching Band Festival, so it's the first time in 7 years. Our esports participation, we had over 104 participants, and we placed 3rd in the state for the Rocket League. And we placed 2nd place at Nationals for robotics. And the highlights we also, I looked at, and as things were going on, obviously before I was there, but even continuing in my short time that I've been there now, facility upgrades. We moved robotics into a larger space. We've had band and choir room upgrades. Our practice fields, we have a new fence that's right along First Ave there, and also being returfed our practice field, which needed some help, so that's good. We also have our weight room redone, which also benefits not just athletics, but also PE and the students as a whole. Our tennis courts were repainted, and the track is being relined, so I would definitely say that we are trending upward, okay? As we move forward, in the last 2 months, I've spoken with a lot of people and observed as much as I possibly could to try to come up with some areas that I would call challenges for TJ. The first one that I listed there was community awareness, and I just want to let you know when I say community, I'm speaking about the students, the staff, the parents, and basically the West End community as a whole. I think that it's something that when we're looking at it, what is offered at TJ? I get the feeling sometimes in just talking with people that maybe they aren't always aware of what we offer, what we have available for our students. Even some of our staff, I think sometimes. I think it's just a general idea of making sure that everybody is aware about everything that we have, even down to the D+1 that we offer. I mean, everything that we have, I'm not sure that everybody always seems to know what exactly it is that's offered and available to them, and I don't want to limit participation by our community not being aware. So that's really a door to be opened. And as an example of something, I was having a discussion with a parent at a baseball game the other day, and they didn't really understand what D+1 meant, or Diploma Plus One. They didn't really understand what the program was and what was really available for their student. So that was a discussion that I had with them, but it's something that I think can be more and more as we make the community more aware as we go. The next one I wrote was youth programs, where we need to provide quality coaches and help those programs to help ourselves. And I think that those programs are something where we look at those coaches, but we also look at facilities and their ability to have space, whether it's outdoor, whether it's indoor. I know there's been some struggles with that I've uncovered in my last few months just talking with some people about that, and it's something that I think is a challenge that we need to work on. And I wrote down enhancing the culture, and that really is understanding to the idea that our culture is there, and I think it's very positive, and I think it's just something that we need to continue to enhance. As you saw on the previous slide, a lot of our co-curricular programs have had a lot of success, done some great things, but we also need to understand that our extracurricular programs, we want them to have the same success as well. And I know that getting our students and our staff, our coaches and everybody on board with that and understanding that wonderful things can be done. I know that Dr. Murillo believes that they can. I know Mr. Hamilton believes they can. Mr. Naughton, our principal, believes they can. I believe they can. We need to make sure that the students and the coaches understand that they can too, as well as the parents, and to raise that bar of expectation for that enhancing the culture piece. As I look forward, and based on what the challenges I just outlined, we developed 3 areas to focus on, and they all need each other to be successful. All right, they kind of all work together. I wrote there on the board, you'll see strengthen the pipeline, and the pipeline is a term that I kind of came up with a few months ago, and it basically starts as I look from the youth programs through the elementary schools, through the middle schools, and to the high school. And while that pipeline is there, and it's not like it's severed or anything like that, it needs to be strengthened. And I think that starts with me as looking at it to say, we need to provide those coaches, we need to have those people there. It's weekly meetings with me, with the middle school AD, and the people there, scheduling regular visits with Wilson coaches and TJ coaches so that they're on the same page, trying to give some training to those middle school coaches in the midst of all that they're putting up with as well. Attending more of the middle school events, that's players and coaches, going down to Wilson and seeing where they're playing and have the attendance there that the kids can see and wrap their hands around. Also regular events scheduled with the elementary schools. I know that we have done some of that, and Dustin was doing a great job at starting that. It just needs to be further enhanced to expose more. More involvement in the club events, doing things with the band and vocal and music, also with robotics. And also having joint performances. I've spoken a lot already with our band about joint performances with the middle and high school bands, whether that's at football games, whether that's at pep rallies, whatever it would happen to be, something that, again, that helps strengthen that pipeline so those students coming through know what their goal is to be active at TJ when they get there. Going along with that is building enthusiasm, more community outreach and exposure, increased social media presence for all our activities. We have a lot of TV screens and things already in place at the school that we need to make better use of. Also looking at that journalism program that we have and building that more to involve those students for production of video and things to use on the wonderful video boards that we have at the school, at the stadium. And just building enthusiasm around something as we're going to, and Mr. Novotny will speak to it a little more, that we have girls wrestling, and that's going to be sanctioned by the girls union, and that's something that we can get excited and build enthusiasm around. The last one that I wrote there also that goes along with it is increasing engagement. And when I say that, it's one of those things where we look at the groups that we're looking at and trying to say, how are we going to get them more engaged in the programs and the things that we offer? But it's more than that, but it's also we need to figure out what motivates the students to want to be participating in something. And as Mr. Hamilton said, the number of 21st century clubs and activities that we've added, maybe there's more that we need to add. If there's a subgroup of kids that really want to do something else, that's something that we can do. We want them to write their own story. This is one of those things where we want them involved to do it. As I've watched and seen, we just need to get everybody in general to believe in themselves and believe that they can do it and they can do wonderful things. Because like I said, there's so many groups in our school that have. We just want it to be school-wide. And those 3 things together, I think, will help do that and move us forward as a whole, as a program. So at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Mr. Jeff Novotny, my colleague from Abraham Lincoln.
Hi, I'm Jeff Novotny, Activities Director and Assistant Principal at Abraham Lincoln this is the 17th year, as I see two former school board members as students, so that says something right there. Your board, this is a lot more specific. It's our participation numbers in the last 3 pages of all of our highlights. These screens are only so big, so we cannot put everything on these screens. So we really hit on some major accomplishments, but really review that because our kids deserve that, and there are some great accomplishments in there. Some highlights for AL3, Missouri River Conference Team Championships, and as I speak, we just won our baseball game earlier, and if we win the second one, we'll have a 2-game lead in the conference lead. So that could change to 4 here in a month, or 2 weeks, but I don't want to jinx anything, but Coach Britsky's doing a great job with our baseball program. As you saw tonight, obviously a highlight, girls state soccer. It was a great 2 weeks, just exciting for the communities, exciting for our parents, our girls, and like I think Dr. Murillo or Diane said, it was our first girls state championship game ever, first state runner-up. Our last boys was 50 years ago, which on a side note, class of 72, 50 year of the reunion, all those players came back to a baseball game 2 weeks ago, and that was a great experience too. They were all up there and we honored them. Multiple state individual qualifiers, conference champions. I think of our ROTC program, national champions out of 27 schools. That third bullet covers all of them, but a lot of great individual accomplishments. All-state speech and music, those two co-curriculars do a great job every single year, deserve a lot of credit. The fifth bullet there is something that kind of is close to my heart as a former winner, the Greater Omaha Sports Committee. In my 17 years, I don't think we've had one winner, maybe a year here and there. Some years we get none. This year we had 3. We were lucky enough to go to the fall, winter, and spring luncheon. Bailey Gears for volleyball, Josh Dix for basketball, and Paige Brocker, who is here tonight, for soccer. And that's just not being a great athlete. That's being an absolute great student and also giving back to their community. Those are the 3 things that committee looks at, and it was a great accomplishment for Abraham Lincoln. And the last bullet, probably the most important, 38% increase in participation, which really looks really big. But, we're really being realistic about it. It's a good accomplishment, but coming off a COVID year, coming off a hybrid year, that really hurt our 21st century clubs more than anything last year because, when kids are coming to school every other day, I think for the most part we didn't have many 21st century clubs, didn't have the late bus, which limited kids going. So getting that back, going to school every day this year, getting those clubs reestablished and moving really helped that percentage. Challenges, you're going to see Luke and I echo a lot of the same things because it's probably the same for a lot of high schools. This first bullet was in my program last year. It's in this year and probably will be in every single year as I present this because I really believe in it. It's that direct correlation, strong youth programs to strong high school programs. You look at the ones at Abraham that are really successful right now, you can go back to a youth program in the community, at the middle school, a connection there. That strength between those 2 programs is something that we strive for in every program and something that is a challenge that we have to keep working on in all of our programs. Luke mentioned culture. Specific example is this girls' soccer team. A lot of people would see a state runner-up and think you have a lot of talent. I will be the first to say Robbie Miller, talent is one thing, but he developed a great culture where the parents, where the girls knew their roles. He went above and beyond, and they really worked together as a whole, and you could see that coming through. You saw it come through tonight, how they support one another, and that was definitely a huge part of their success. So great culture in all of our programs. And then the last bullet, our goal to 2024, how do we get to 75%? We're getting closer. Tim said I was doing a lot of data. I think we're 84 students away from 75%. So I'm a former math teacher. How do we get there? Well, the challenges, the focus, that is our focus. Youth involvement, I've talked a little bit about it. What are some things we're specifically doing at AL other than just youth programs? We're having elementary nights at athletic contests, bringing them up. We had huge feedback, positive feedback from elementary parents, inviting them into our gyms, inviting them to soccer games, connecting them there. College youth, just because of their strong numbers, we had every elementary youth concert at AL this year, and a lot of positive feedback from those students too. So really connecting, whether it's directly connecting in an actual program or just getting them in our high school to see what we offer, getting that connection so they think in their elementary head, hey, when I get to high school, I want to be on that stage, or I want to be on that court, or I want to be marching with that rifle in ROTC. Finding new programming. They've already hit on it, 21st century. If we're going to get above 75%, finding the things that are going to motivate that 30% we're not reaching. You know, we can say 75% are great, but what about the 25% that we're not reaching? Because those students, they don't have a connection right now. They're not in athletics. They're not in music. They haven't found a club they like. So like Luke said, trying to find their niche, trying to find something if we can offer as a school to motivate them, something they want to be there, help their attendance. That's a goal. And then girls wrestling, you know, I really put that there because not very often does the state sanction a new sport. We're very lucky this year, and I thank you as a school board. We were ahead of the ball game a couple months ago, approving coaching, getting the ball rolling. A lot of school districts are still in that process of are they going to have it or not. We know we're going to have it. We're co-oping this first year, AL and TJ working together. So it's benefited the girls, more competition at practices, but our goal, short-term goal, is to have enough girls at both high schools to have a just like the boys, a well-rounded wrestling program. So I mentioned girls wrestling. That is going to be a focus of both schools because we definitely want that to be successful. With that, us three will be up here. If you have any questions?
Questions from the board?
I got just a quick question. You, all three of you mentioned a little bit as far as working directly with, you know, the coaches and, you know, the facilitators of these groups. So what sort of outlets, as far as like feedback outlets for like the students, coaches, and facilitators, if you could maybe go into detail as far as what outlets are there so that if there's, you know, some sort of, you know, easy fixable issue to be able to get more kids involved that we just don't quite know about, that they're seeing that. Is there any outlets that are there?
I understand your question. Like,
So in other words, if we saw something that was occurring, how are we getting that information?
Yeah. Or how are you interacting with the coaches and with the, because I know, you know, we have our programs that have an assigned coach and assigned facilitator. We also have our student groups where maybe it's student led. Yeah. Like the differences in how you're able to, you know, work with those groups so that if there's any issues, you can get them addressed quickly.
Well, I guess the short answer, I mean, the official answer would be you meet with them before the season, you get organized, and at the end of the season, puts a little closure to it. But really, any sport or activity or club, if there an issue that arises, it is an open door policy. That's our job as an activities director. So, you know, whether it be a participation issue or maybe they're having an issue with a parent or student on the team, you know, coming in, letting me know about it and trying to problem solve that issue to correct it. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's because that's the only thing that I sometimes worry about. If it's, you know, a team that hasn't assigned, you know, a coach that, you know, you're able to work with, that's one thing. When it's a student group, you know, that we're starting to get more into, that's where it's like, how do we, you know, be able to offer that same sort of support for them if it's just
I
students?
think one of the things that I would add on to that is the piece that I wrote about also engaging with the middle school, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that position is a little bit different than Mr. Novotny's in mind, where that person is also a teacher. So their ability to handle all those things at a snap might be a little different than ours. So having that relationship with the AD at the middle school level, I think, is helpful, where he could call me and say, hey, I've got a problem with this, or and that's something that I can do, especially because we'll have weekly interaction about that, whether it's numbers, participation numbers, whether it's student issues with attendance, you know, at practices, whatever it happens to be. And I think, like Jeff said, it's just something where we take an active role, whether it's at the middle school or at the high school with those coaches, or even if it's parents that are sponsoring, if it's anybody that has that information about it, so that we know what's going on and we can help them through whatever the issue is, whatever they're looking for.
All right. Thanks. That's my only question.
So I don't know if this is something you have considered before, but when I was in high school, I didn't know there was a route to create my own club like the 21st Century, which is awesome. That is now a district-wide thing. And I actually had a teacher who I consider a mentor that kind of let me know that that was a route for me, and the principal shared that with me. So I'm just thinking that one of our goals too is fostering those relationships with adults, like one positive adult in the school. So is that something that you've explored, that maybe reaching those students that haven't found a group for them, that maybe there's like that teacher they're close to that can maybe talk to them and say, hey, have you ever thought about starting your own club?
A lot of times, you know, if you look at our 21st century clubs, at least at Abraham Lincoln, they are they're not athletic, they're not music, they're
Right.
paranormal club. I mean, it's things that will interest that probably an extracurricular or co-curricular doesn't hit. I can tell you how that normally happens. They just jump in my office, Mr. Novotny, I want to start this club. And I say, great. I said, here's what we got to do. We got to find a sponsor. So sometimes it starts with a student, but we go find that trusting adult, and they usually run right to the teacher who, like you just said, has the trusting adult, someone that they can sit in their room 3:30 to 4:30 every afternoon and talk about pottery or any of those clubs we do offer. And I think you hit it on the head. I think, look, this board report's great for me because school year winds down. It's kind of, we have our data consultant things, but this gives me 3 weeks, 4 weeks to gather all this. And what I've come up with looking at our goal is it isn't look at the 65-70% that's already doing something, because they're, for the most part, going to be fine. It's trying to get to that other 30-35% and finding if we have anything that can motivate them. And it's really not just a high school issue. And then like connecting with the youth, trying to get them, all the way through, so when they come as freshmen, they have an interest or something that we offer and we can get them on the right page rather than just trying to create at that time.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I might just add to that, because I think we've had conversations before about the surveys that we give out when we ask students if they like school or they're caring adult. And so I think just having all of these different data points around it to know those, we know specifically who the students are who are participating. We know who they are. So we know those who aren't. And there's a direct correlation between the same students who say they like school and not. So we're able to identify them to really bolster that and really target them to find out what they do like. So it's ongoing, and we're working on it in progress. So it's the data pieces have really enhanced our ability to do that.
Thanks.
Any further
I
questions?
did have one question, I guess. Are there clubs that we should be doing more for? I was thinking of the chess club. I know Wilson, they had gone to a competition over at Fremont. I think it's probably the only competition they've actually gone to in the whole year, right? And I don't know, I questioned Mr. Throne to see, hey, had he thought of holding his own, or is that something that his administration is even aware of, that they've got this club and they should be doing something? It's like, I'm just curious how those clubs are supported, if they should become something we put more time or resources into.
Some clubs are competitive like that. Chess club, Mr. Kerr, who's announcing our baseball game right now, he's our sponsor. We're in the Metro Chess League, so every Wednesday at 3:30 in our library, either we go somewhere in a school van or they come here and we have our chess competitions, usually an hour after school on Wednesdays, and then at the end there's a tournament. So some of these clubs can have a competitive nature. Some are just a group of students who want to sit around and whatever their interest is, study it. Or we have board game club. You walked in there and they picked a different board game and they played it. So just depending on what the club is, if there's that competitive nature, I mean, I'm sure that's something we can definitely look at. But give you the example for chess, there are things out there that we have gotten involved with.
Okay. Just adding into that, I think that awareness piece that I brought up in my presentation is also part of that, where I want our sponsors of those clubs to know that that's available to them, because I think it's sometimes in the past of some of the people that I've spoken to, they kept it very small or they kept it in-house, which, is great, but you'd like it to grow, because I think with that component where there might be some travel or some competition with somebody else, that would draw more students to it, that they might want that piece a little further than just staying home. So I think part of it is also that awareness to my sponsors and my coaches that, hey, you have the ability to do this. Come and let me know what we can do to make that work for you, and figure it out, whether it's a van to take them somewhere or whatever it is, just to be able to make that even an opportunity that they didn't necessarily know that they even had. So.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, and for our last presentation this evening, we will have our 2021-2022 Annual Technology Report. Mr. John Stile will be joining me at the podium. Mr. Stile will talk about our technology and the things that we're doing there. He'll also touch briefly on the library, a library report for us, and then he will close out by talking a little bit about our security and the efforts and the work that we're doing currently. So, Mr. Stile, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Morello, Ms. Shudak, and board members. I am very excited to be here tonight to talk about our annual technology and library report. The job of my department is to support the students and staff with their technology needs. This technology team that you see up here enables us to do that. They are out there each and every day working on our technology and help building. The John McGreevy oversees our systems and network support. Lisa Spidel oversees our user support. Those two teams really work together to build a really robust technology experience for the students in particular. When Dr. Murillo first came to our school district, she challenged the technology department to find a data warehouse that could be easily used by our administration and our principals. It's taking a bit of time, but our friends at Google pointed us to a group, the Five-Star Group, and they have built us over the last 18 months the Five-Star Command Center. This is real-time data available to our administrators and our principals for each and every student. What they have done is amazing, and what you see up here is a representation. There is attendance data, there is MAP data, there is state testing data. Without our partnership with Google, this would not be possible, but if you look at each of those bars, you could actually drill down to an individual student. In fact, one of the fun things that it does is that you can actually see in your building whose birthday it is that day or whose birthdays. So really a neat product. Some of the other focus we've had this past year is building or updating our data procedures manual to include D+1 from PowerSchool. Now, I just told you about Five-Star, right? Well, why is it important that PowerSchool is being updated and being updated accurately? Well, a lot of the data that's going into our Five-Star Command Center comes directly out of PowerSchool. So to ensure that, we're also doing operational data checks and working with the building data managers to ensure that we have pristine and accurate data. An example, a very simple example would be the student's, essentially the student's home address and or a good valid contact cell phone number or home phone. Just ensuring that data is right, it means the world. Finally, we have been involved over the last year implementing and virtualizing software that supports our CTE and some of our D+1 programs, along with allowing the Google Logon, the SAML, to go roll out so that we have a single logon for the student's experience. It sounds like really easy to do, but when you start thinking about all of the systems that we have, it takes a little bit of work and effort behind the scenes. So, some of these supported, or actually, these are our big supported systems throughout our district. Now, I'm fairly certain you're aware of PowerSchool and Frontline, and you're now aware of Five-Star. Maybe you've heard of iVisions, but maybe some of these other ones, such as Blackboard. Blackboard allows our communications department to do mass communication for our students, staff, parents, and community. Avigilon, we're going to talk a little bit about security towards the end of this. That is the software that is now running our security system. It is an extremely robust software, allows us to do tons of things that we could never do before. But the one I really want to focus on is SysAid. And I'm not sure if you've heard of it before. It's probably passed once or twice through the board packet. But SysAid is what allows my department to inventory all of those Chromebooks that are out there. It also allows us to build the tickets associated with each individual device. So it's a cradle-to-grave. It allows us to do cradle-to-grave tracking of our Chromebooks and technology equipment. So, where this data might have come from is our SysAid product. So over the last year, our technicians closed 12,300 tickets. So what might be a ticket closed? Earlier, Mr. Milborn joked that we probably had 12,000 reboots that we closed as tickets. That's not exactly true, but there is some truth to it. However, a ticket usually constitutes there is an issue with the device, whether it could be a simple thing that the screen's not connecting properly. It may be a mouse needs connected. It could be all the way up to a complete hardware replacement of motherboards, LCD screens, or things of that nature. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our help desk support, because that is really the heart of our technology. Everything that comes to my department goes through our help desk support team. So if you have a technology need, whether it be a request, a repair, or what have you, it starts with our help desk team. They handled over 15,000 of those requests. Now, how do they get these requests? One, you can chat them through Google, which, again, you're probably thinking, well, if the device doesn't work, how do you do that, right? You can also call them. You can also send an email. So we have a multitude of ways of doing that, and they handle a vast majority. Like sometimes it's a simple thing of helping somebody connect to our guest network. Sometimes it's a little more complex in helping them to connect to one of our clear panels, and there might be an issue on the back side of that. The next thing on the list is our drive-up support. That kind of came from when COVID first started. But we saw 320, whether they're mainly students and or parents that drove up to get support. Now, what does support look like for a drive up? Well, essentially you drive up to the tech center, name says, and then once you're there, you call a phone number, our help desk team answers, and they find out the issue. Before you leave that day, you'll either have your device repaired or have another device to take back. So we try to extremely help the customers. We're currently in our summer school. We have already closed 120 tickets. Now, this last fact, our students have visited over 5.5 million different websites. It's a little quirky, but I thought it was kind of cool to present to you. Now, as some of you are sitting there, you may be aware, you may not be aware, that we actually have technology centers in our secondary buildings. What that might look like, and as you can see, the middle schools actually have a district technician that oversees that, and you can walk in and you can receive support. As you might imagine, our middle schools are they are our highest breakage in the district. It tends to go with a lot of other things as well. Now, what I also am excited about, at our high schools, both AL and TJ, we have a student-led technology center. What is amazing about that is that gives students the opportunity to work alongside a district technician and actually do break fix while working with the customer. They do amazing work in there. So that break fix sometimes is the simplest thing of doing a reboot with the customer there, all the way to, as you can imagine, a device that may have been dropped down a stair and tumbled a few times and be hanging together by a few pieces, right? But the students get to work with other students. What we have learned over the last few years, it's really not the technical skills that's the most difficult thing for our students. It's really that customer service and learning to work with somebody that has just like been devastated because they've dropped their device or their device isn't working and they have something that they need in the next few moments. On a personal note, we actually have one of our district technicians that went through this program about 5 years ago and now works as a district technician in one of our middle schools. We don't want to forget about our district libraries. They have about 125,000 books available, which is really amazing when you stop to think about that. Lisa Schwartz oversees our district libraries, and she does amazing work. She makes sure these books, first of all, are current, with both fiction and nonfiction, but she also ensures that the books are in good repair. The circulation for our library has dipped over the last couple years. We had more books circulating prior to COVID, but I don't believe it's just COVID that affects that, because if you stop and think, one of the things that happened with COVID is we all accelerated on our online. And so there's more ebooks and podcasts that are available to our students. However, we still have high quality libraries available for students who would like to use them. Just like we as adults, some of us prefer to go to the library and some jump online. It's just a great opportunity for our students. And I promise I did not prod public participation tonight, but it really was a nice thing, because over the last year or so, the technology department has begun a process, and we're about a third of the way done with this, but we, with the help of Daryl Meyer, are modernizing the security of our buildings utilizing technology. One of the things that we have done is we are getting all new video surveillance cameras. Now, why is that important? Because our old system was really hard to access, did not work on a Chromebook, and you could, if you needed to have information or view of information, what you would do is you would call up help desk, we would build a ticket, and then we would start to look for the data you needed. And that process could take, sometimes it take a day, day and a half, just because, like, you may have thought the incident happened at 2 p.m. when reality it happened at 4 p.m. Well, when you're looking through data, the old system, you had to almost go in real time to review that data. So that's 2 hours of looking for that incident when you weren't looking in the right spot. The nice thing about the new cameras, the Avigilon cameras, is that they can be bookmarked by the administration, by the principal, so others can view at that moment in time, and they can be saved for a period of time. All done electronically. The second thing is the access and control system. This is something that we've never had before, and really what you start to think about in access control is really a card reader or a badge reader system. Very, very similar to what I have here. This will now be your key to the building. The other exciting thing for that is it will document who is in our building and who's not in our building. The third thing is we now do not have to deal with alarm codes, because if you have the proper credentials, you can go over to the wall at a certain keypad. It doesn't work at all of them, but you can arm or disarm that building. That is amazing to have. And the other thing is, if by chance this came up missing, as soon as you notify the tech department, we can have that disabled and have a new card being issued. Where in the past with district master keys, there is no way to change locks out, and it's not really cost effective. The last thing is not as glamorous, but it's our intrusion detection system. But it's very important, because one of the things that we as a school district, and I'm sure you as a school board want, is when we close the building down and leave for the night, when we come back tomorrow, we want the building to be as we left it. So this is the part where we do our fire and our intrusion. But there's also other parts that we monitor through this service, and that's freezers, and is there water going into places that it shouldn't be. It is a key component. Now, to kind of get back to talking a little bit more in depth about the security. When you come to our building now with this new system and you are a guest, you will not be, the doors will not immediately open. You will ring a bell on a video screen. You will come up and there will be an individual that will say, "How may I help you? And what is your business here?" And if the business isn't something that really they should be there, at that point we don't open the door. But let's just say it appears that they need to come in. They're going to come into a secure vestibule. Now they are still contained in our building because they are just now passing into our office. But they can't, even if they wanted to run through the building, the doors will be locked. We will then buzz them through if they have business inside the school once they've gone through our TPAS system. And if you're not familiar with the TPAS system, it does a quick background check. In conclusion, I am very fortunate to work with a lot of great technicians and technology folks that really do care about our students and our community and making sure that they have the technology that they need to do. We, as a department, are looking forward to the 22-23 school year and being an integral part of that. Questions?
Questions from the board?
Sure. Do we have the capability now to know the position of doors in our building, especially exterior doors, but then also our fire doors that are internal?
Yes. All the doors that are monitored, and I do believe the fire doors are monitored as well.
Right.
But for 100%, the exterior doors, we know if they're open, closed, and what state they're in. The other thing is, this hasn't been implemented yet, but we have the ability on a phone app to actually give alerts if that door is left open to folks that would need access to that.
And the reason that app is important is our principals are not in the office. So right now, the alert goes to our secretary's desktop. And what we want to have is the app on the phone where the principals are out in the building, and our SROs, so that they can immediately respond to that open door. And so the app is very important. That's that next level that we hope to have in place for the fall. Because we want to know if a door is open, because our best defense is locked doors. That's our best defense, is to keep them out. So no more prop doors, knowing if something gets propped, knowing if kids go out a door, all of that data should reach our administrators immediately when that door opens.
Any additional questions?
I have a couple quick questions just related to when you mentioned the data warehouse, especially. That's just something that I am always interested in. So now this data warehouse, though, this isn't on premise, right? This is all through cloud services, through Google, through PowerSchool, through.
Actually, it is through cloud services. It's part of our GCP, our Google. So we own the data warehouse. Five Star is really just putting the way to access the data warehouse.
Oh, okay, awesome, cool. That helps. That's always good. And then I had one more question related to data on students. So when there's data pertaining to students that's stored in our systems, after the student either graduates or goes to a different school district or something, how long do we keep that data? How long is that data stored?
It depends on what the piece of data is. So, for instance, your diploma that you graduated with your credits,
Yeah, that's
we're
forever.
going to keep that forever. But then the system also purges out information that's not pertinent over a time period, and that usually happens during the summer rollover.
Oh, okay, cool. And that's something that like the providers we're working with at Google, like that they're primarily managing, or is that something that we have to actively be managing?
The data that I'm talking about is our PowerSchool data.
Yeah.
And so we primarily manage that.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, my background's data security. So when you mention data warehouse, I'm like, oh, interesting. So sorry.
Well, and here's the thing on the data warehouse. Dr. Murillo has really, she really brought that to our district and really brought the idea to it.
Yeah.
Because, and now we're kind of seeing that in the future, that's going to be the fruits of the labor.
I have a follow-up question. So I have heard from a few parents about just some questions, some current concerns with PowerSchool. So is there like a means of feedback for parents? Because it sounds like there is for students if they have technology concerns as well as staff, but is there a route for parents?
Yes, typically, each school has a data manager, and for PowerSchool, a lot of times it's a counselor. It doesn't always have to be, but it would be, the parent would have access to say, I have a concern. Now, if it's a concern of like technical nature, it would actually, the school would kick it to my department.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
Just one last, will our building automation systems then be part of the monitoring that the technology department oversees? So such as lighting, ventilation, operations of the mechanical equipment?
There are a couple of things. that do get monitored, such as like the freezer and refrigerator temperatures, if there was water in certain mechanical areas. But there is the optimized system that's
Right.
coming.
Right.
That is not at this time tied in with our monitoring.
Okay.
Mr. Stiles, I just have a couple quick questions before. So with the video recorders then, I know that you said we can pinpoint things of that nature. Just thinking of the recent events in our world, we can go real time, see who's in the hallway if needed, all that kind of, hopefully we don't ever have to use that stuff, but just thinking through Uvalde and things of that nature. And then are all the schools ready for the key? I mean, I know we still have some that are key cards, but when do we project that we will be there?
I think I glossed over this, but the project completion is December 15th of this year. We're about a third of the way through that.
And you did the big schools first, so it'll go quicker as we keep going. And I think that will be, and the one key piece that we've kind of left off, we really looked at technology on the side of safety of our schools. But also remember, Mr. Hamilton's team does a lot of drills that we do beyond like lockdown, lockout, and what that looks like, because I think securing a building is multifaceted. And it can't just be one area. But the one real key that we were missing, because we had all of the things in place from Mr. Hamilton's side, and the schools were doing those very well. It's now, how do we secure that building, and how do we have real-time access, and how do we be able to see live what's going on? And that's where we're getting to, and alarming those doors, and knowing when a door gets open and you see an alert. We never take that for granted.
Thank you, Mr. Stiles.
And that concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morello. All right, next we have resolutions. We have a few of those this evening. The first resolution is the second reading of our policies. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of the policies and the first and only required reading for the administrative regulations as presented. And those policies are Policy 201, Board Functions and Operational Goals. Policy 202, Board of Directors, Powers, Duties, and Members' Authority. Policy 208, Gifts to Board of Education Members. Policy 214, Board of Directors Meetings. Policy 218, Agenda Preparation. Policy 220, Board of Directors Records. Let me scroll down here. Policy 222, Administration. In absence of Board of Directors policy, suspension of policies is 228, 510, which is use of electronic surveillance. 512.1 is a administrative regulation. It's instructional discipline. 513.1, anti-bullying. 603.3, curriculum development. 603.4, program evaluation. And my scroll isn't scrolling. There we go. Policy 617, Internet Appropriate Student Use. 617.1, Internet Appropriate Student Use Regulation. 628, Teaching about Controversial Issues. And finally, Policy 634, Student Qualifications for Senior Year Plus Coursework.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Wilson, go ahead and call the roll.
And I've opened up online voting here. Mr. Kazire,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Tripp, Ms. Shudek.
Yes, and that has approved. Moving on, the next is superintendent's contract. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the board approves the continuation of the superintendent's employment contract with the Council Bluffs Community School District as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I guess I'm just continue to be pleased with Vicky's leadership, not only here, but in the community. I think that's been a rare thing, especially through this pandemic and all the different things that happened on, and then being, I think, so willing to go into just kind of any discussions we really go down, whether they're easy or hard, or, it's kind of rare. And then bringing some of these things like the map testing or D+1 as initiatives for the district to take on. I think it's good to see kind of the, I don't know, not say bold, but new direction at times. So, nice job.
Anybody else? Dr. Merle, I'd just like to say, I've said in the past, and unfortunately, previous years, I voted no on your contract due to the permissive topics being in your contract. The previous board, back in 2018, voted to remove those permissive topics, and during that time, it said that the superintendents would also come. And I appreciate your leadership in the fact that this year you urged and agreed to remove those permissive topics and put those in the handbooks, just like the CWA and CWA. So I appreciate that, and I'm happy to be able to vote yes on your contract tonight. So thank you.
And I echo what Jill says, because this is my first time looking at a superintendent's contract, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth about just some of those permissive topics, and that's something that, I know I appreciate, as well as Jill, and I think maybe other board members too. And I echo too what Troy has said about your leadership, and that you've done a really well job.
All right, Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
And Ms. Shudek?
Yes. And that has passed. The next item is professional growth systems. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that the board approves the professional growth systems for certified staff, building administrators, central office administrators, and the superintendent.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this topic?
I think more of just a comment. I appreciated seeing how thorough everything was and kind of catered to each person in our district and their leadership plan, because I don't think that's something that parents or students or community members really know unless they have somebody that's in the community or that is an employee of our district. So that was something that I thought was great to see as a new board member. I appreciated that.
Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes. And our final resolution of the night is employee handbook revisions. Do I have a motion?
I move that the board approves the employee handbook revisions as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Seemed pretty straightforward, but is there anything else we should have explanation on here that seemed pretty straightforward? Okay.
No, it seems pretty straightforward. And just for those that might be watching, Dr. Merlo and team met with the CBA, talked through everything. There was no issues, concerns. It all seems very straightforward, where we're just updating some language.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes. And next, we have our consent agenda items, which includes the approval of the middle school ELA intervention instructional resource, approval of the contract agreement with 4 Points Education Partners, standing committee for the annual status report, approval of the 22-23 membership fees, approval of the elementary mouth consumable resources, SAM service agreement, school-based therapist memorandum, MOU with Underwood. There's additional MOUs with Move This World and Growing Leaders, special education contracts with Mason City Schools, personnel agendas, and the May 2022 financial summaries, as well as the disbursements, from May 19th through June 20th. Do I have a motion on those items?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on these items? Okay, Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes.
Ms. Shudek?
Yes, and that has approved. And if you guys don't mind, I'd just like to take a point of personal privilege to also thank Dr. Vorthman for all the work that you've done with the district and your time here. You're going to be missed, and we wish you nothing but the best out in the farmland and Trainer. So thank you very much, Dr. Borthman. All right, and with that, we are adjourned.
Or wherever else he wants to go.
Out on the farm.
In the Finterland.
Oh, yes, what do I need to do? I figured.
Anywhere else he wants to go.